We are looking for individuals who have demonstrated the willingness, the desire, the ability to make a difference in this world. We are very much a mission-driven school. Our mission, in my own words, is about identifying and tackling the world's biggest and most complex problems in order to make the world a better place. And we want to, fill our classrooms with people who also share this mission and who are comfortable making an impact, making a difference, making a contribution.
Continuing on those lines of, working to ensure representation from traditional and non-traditional backgrounds, can you talk about some of the strategy behind our events and how we look to expose students from all different backgrounds?
Sure. So first of all, I really want to reinforce what you said in terms of a desire to have an incredibly diverse student body on many, many different dimensions. Um, y- yes, we are MIT's School of Management. We are extremely proud of that. I think sometimes with that comes, I'm going to say, the misperception that you have to have been an engineer or at least a STEM major to be even considered for our MBA program, and that is absolutely not true. Do we want people to be quant comfortable? Yes. But having said that, you know, it's really unlimited in terms of what people's different backgrounds are when they join our programs. And, that is actually an important aspect of sort of our strategy because, again, to tackle really complicated problems, you need to bring together people with different backgrounds, different experience levels, different job experiences to come together to really look at these problems from different perspectives. So now you asking how we go out and recruit people. So first of all, hopefully this is a message that's not new to anybody, that this is a message that when we're either on campus or on the road, a message that we're sharing. More often than not, when we're hosting an event, we're not doing it on our own because we understand the best way for you all to get the feel of MIT Sloan is through the experiences of our students and our alums. And so when we're traveling, we try, we work really hard to bring together a panel of alums as well as other alums for networking who can share their personal experiences. And then on campus, we'll often, rely on students to help us do the same. And when we're thinking about a panel, especially when we have, hundreds of alums in a particular city, we're looking to create a panel with people who perhaps have had very different backgrounds coming into Sloan and are doing very different things now with their Sloan degree to show, really, to showcase, not just to tell, but to show. Show is so much more powerful than tell. To show really the diversity of who our students are and who they become.
We often hear the term Sloanies helping Sloanies. So could you share maybe a few examples of what that looks like before, during, or even
And
after
after,
someone's time at Sloan?
yeah. So I actually have a story. I just had coffee with one of our current students, and she told me a story that I loved. So I'm going to share it with all of you. Current student taking a Pilates class in Central Square, which isn't far from here. Somehow struck up a conversation with another person in her Pilates class. Realized that other person, this was an MBA, was a Sloan Fellows alum. They started chatting with each other. Realized that they actually grew up very near each other, even though there was a bit of a difference in age, and that they have very similar work interests. And now the MBA is actually helping out in the Sloan Fellows startup company, like
Wow.
doing real work there. I think you couldn't ask for a better example of Sloanies helping Sloanies than that. And literally, I hear stories like this all the time. The other one, which is, pretty much, I think it has been institutionalized over the years, is, and this is actually in the old days thing, because this does not happen very much. I think it's important to note that the job search process has really changed quite a bit over time. It's much more point in time. It's much more individual. However, in the old days, when companies would come on campus and they would interview tons of students at any point, on a given day, um, we always got the stories from the employers that they'd have to switch up their questions in the afternoon because the students in the morning, out of just the pure interest of helping each other out, would tell the students who are, and they're competing for the same jobs here, would tell the students from the afternoon what the questions were. And so the firms would often, change that up so there'd be a little bit of an element of surprise and they didn't have as much time to prepare. I could probably share hundreds of stories around Sloanies helping Sloanies. My count, one more. And these are again not traditionals, but my predecessor was once traveling and realized that he was halfway around the world and did not have a certain medication that he needed. So what did he do? He landed, he reached out to an alum who hooked him up with his pharmacist, got him the drugs he needed without skipping a beat. Like these kinds of stories happen all the time.
Wow. Thank you for sharing those, transformational stories and just impactful stories of how organic relationships are built here. And they happen in the most unique places, like a Pilates class. So thank you for sharing that story with us. And kind of continuing on the lines in terms of collaboration and Sloanies helping Sloanies, that happens within the department spaces as well. So can you talk about how the Office of Admissions, collaborates with other departments, whether it's the career
Yeah.
development office or the office of DEI? Can you just kind of shed some light on how we collaborate with other offices to build an inclusive culture?
Well, absolutely. So the reality is, we admissions could not do our job without many, if not most, of the other officers at Sloan. Um, that phrase, "it takes a village," I think applies to us, in its truest of sense. Um, we get the credit for attracting and converting and seating incredible classes of students, but without partnering with, program team offices, as you mentioned, there's the Student Life Office, there's the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, there's the Career Development Office, partially for us as, your first interaction, showcasing what some of these other groups do, but also having them engage with prospects and getting their feedback on prospects as well. When people become part of our community, you know, um, who you are is has an effect on everybody. We're making creating a community here of faculty, staff, and students. And so to give other departments the opportunity to engage with prospects and perhaps share some perspective is also really critical for us. When we talk about interviewing, it's an expanded group who interviews. And so many times there are people from the program teams who are interviewing for us. There are people from the career office who are interviewing for us as well. Let me just add on the interview front. So interviews are not students and they are not alums. They are this extended admissions committee that I just described.
Awesome. So I want to address this because I think when you were entering the space, I did do a welcome and try to figure out where people were calling in from. So we have a very geographically diverse audience today. And I want to kind of address the elephant in the room in terms of our international student population, given the many shifts and changes in
Yep.
terms of visas, policies, among other things. So can you kind of shed some light on how Sloan is supporting our international student population?
Yep. Thank you for asking that. I have just myself, I have just come back from a 2-week trip in Southeast Asia. I was in Bangkok, Singapore, Manila, and Jakarta. I have colleagues who are in Europe. Terrell was in Africa earlier, and we've been all over the world. And I think it's more important than ever for us to actually come to you to share the message that MIT would not be MIT without our international students. And that's a direct quote from our president, um, who said this actually in May, and I continue to quote her on a regular basis. It's really, really important. Again, you go back to this mission, but it's about making the world a better place. And even our domestic students, when I talk to them, they want to be part of an incredibly global community. And so our international students are very important to us. Now, having said that, hopefully what I just said and what you hear from others drowns out some of perhaps the noise you might be hearing that leads you to think otherwise. On the visa front, we monitored the situation very closely this past year. Throughout our process last year, there was a freeze placed on scheduling some interviews. There were some delays with some interviews. When all was said and done across all of our programs, we had 9 people in total who wanted to come here, who were not able to, and all of those people were offered a deferral and accepted it for the next year. That's a relatively small number. Any single one is not great, don't get me wrong, but that's a relatively small number compared to the number of students who actually matriculated this past year. We within admissions and our amazing international students office worked very closely with our international students to monitor their progress and to understand where there may have been some bottlenecks. And we plan to do so, excuse me, again this year, even starting earlier. So we're actually modifying our admit site for our international students to be able to start communicating their status from the very, very beginning.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Donna. So we're getting close to time. I want to definitely leave some time for our audience to be able to pose their questions. So feel free to use that Q&A to ask your questions. I flagged a few of them, but want to give you some additional time to get those questions in. The last couple of questions I have for you
Yep.
pertain to outcomes and student success. So could you talk about like how do we measure the success or impact of different admissions initiatives?
Good question. Um, so I'm going to say the ultimate measure for us is to be able to seat, highly qualified classes for each one of our programs, along a variety of dimensions for which, creating a diverse student body, which is, focuses on gender. It, in the results, we look at gender, we look at race and ethnicity, we look at geography, we look at undergraduate major, we look at employer. The extreme example that I like to give, because I think it's probably the least emotional one, is nobody, not even the consultants, want an MBA class of 400 consultants. Nobody wants that. And so part of the work that we do is to ensure that that does not happen. Now, all of that actually begins up front with all of our marketing and recruiting efforts, and our focus is really initially on trying to attract as diverse a student body as we possibly can, an applicant pool as we can. And then, as I mentioned before, we have a fairly rigorous review process and assessment process that we apply consistently across the board to then yield our classes. And so I think for us, that is the ultimate success. Having said that, we then look more internally at, the types of events that we host. For every event that we hold, whether it be in person or virtual, and Terrell, hold me to this, we actually send a follow-up survey to all of the attendees
Mhm.
asking for their feedback. And we actually look at that and assess that and, make some changes accordingly. So, the types of events we hold, the number of registrants, the actual number of people who show up for an event. These are all different numbers that we look at and track and assess sort of the quality of what we're doing, that then helps us lead though to really that ultimate goal of seating these classes.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Donna. And I have one final question. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask this, and I'm pretty sure the audience would appreciate it. You've talked about, your philosophy of like what you're looking for in application process. But what would be a piece of advice you would give to a prospective
Yep.
candidate as they're navigating this process? Maybe for the first time, or maybe we have some re-applicants in the audience for the second time. Like, what is a piece of advice you would give them?
It's a two-parter.
Mhm.
The first is really to spend the time engaging with the different schools who are on your list, attending events like this for all of the schools, showing up in person if that's reasonable. Schools have personalities, they do. And sometimes on a brochure or even a website, you may get a sense of it, but maybe not so much. Engaging with people who are part of that community, whether it be virtually or in person, I think makes a huge difference. And I think will help you better think about which schools might be better for you than others. So that's number one. The second piece of advice, when it comes to the application process, I cannot emphasize this enough. Be yourself.
Mhm.
Simple, two words, on every part of the application. Um, Again, the worst thing that could happen is for you to show up on campus at our school or any other school and say, "What am I doing here?" And if you're providing us with answers that you think we want as opposed to what you want to share, you could end up in that situation, and that is not good for anybody. I am sensing there are 256 people on this Zoom right now. There is the right school out there for each and every one of you. Do I hope it's MIT Sloan? Absolutely. Would I understand if it might not be? I understand that too. And from the bottom of my heart, what I want most for each of you is for you to find and land at that right school for you.
Awesome advice, Donna. So I want to shift gears a little bit to some of the questions we got from the open Q&A in our chat.
Yep.
So I'll try to get to as many as I can, but if I don't, I do apologize because there's a
We
lot.
could do this rapid fire if you want me to. I can cut some of these short. Do you have a lot of them?
It's about 21 we have in here,
Okay.
but we can kind of filter some of them out.
Okay. I'm
Um,
ready.
the first one kind of went back to something you mentioned earlier about being a good teammate. How do
Mhm.
you define being a good teammate?
Oh, for me personally, it's about, being supportive of other people, recognizing that you are not, an individual contributor, but you're part of the team. And really understanding what your personal contribution can be, where the gaps are, and then being comfortable with others filling those gaps, because in the end, it's the outcomes that matter.
Awesome. The next question I have pertains to the waitlisted candidates in round one.
Yep.
Um, any suggestions on how to get up the wait list? And
Yep.
do you recommend disclosing interviews or offers from other schools and still continuing your interest in MIT?
Yeah. So, we encourage people to send us updates. Now, this is not on a daily basis, and these should be relevant updates. But periodically sharing updates that might make a difference. It also shows that your continued interest. If in fact you have another offer, I mean, it doesn't hurt. I'm not sure how much it might help us at all, but if you want to share that with us, you are more than welcome to do so. What I would ask you not to do is to fly halfway across the country or halfway around the world and come to our office and sit in the waiting room and try to chat with Terrell or myself or anybody else. We totally appreciate the effort. You don't need to do so. We understand that the people on the wait list really also want to be part of the Sloan community. We have all of the information that we need in front of us. More often than not, from my own experience, it ends up being a somewhat awkward conversation. And I hold on to every word I say and choose them carefully because I don't want to mislead you or anything. And so, and to be honest, people sometimes fly halfway around the world to be here, and we will not meet with them. So we love your interest, but you can do that remotely. Show us your love remotely.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, Donna. So the next one kind of goes back to, the what you mentioned earlier about being MIT's management school. So could you share more on how MIT students, Sloan and MIT
Yep.
overall, leverage the innovation ecosystem and develop and
Yep.
launch impactful technologies?
So it actually begins with housing.
Mm.
If you decide to come to Sloan and live in graduate housing, you may have a roommate from physics or chemical engineering. There's no guarantee that your roommate's going to be a Sloan student. As a Sloan student, you're also an MIT graduate student. As a Sloan student, and you can take other classes throughout the institute and vice versa. So again, PhD in physics could be sitting next to you in a finance class. You can participate in clubs, conferences, competitions, you name it, throughout the institute. You mentioned the entrepreneurial innovative ecosystem. It's actually the Martin Trust Center for MIT Entrepreneurship. While we at Sloan love to call it our own, the Trust Center is actually there for the greater MIT community. And if you're interested in, being part of this ecosystem, I have no doubt you will engage with people from throughout the Institute.
Awesome. The next one I have is a two-part question. I'll try to paraphrase as much
Yep.
as I can.
Yep.
The first part of the question is what student clubs or communities have been most impactful for similar international students? And then the second part of the question is how can candidates from operational roles best demonstrate leadership impact?
Wait, tell me the first part again.
Oh, just what student clubs or communities have been most impactful?
Oh, huh. I think all of our clubs are. It depends on what you're interested in. The impact is to the individual. So, I'm guessing you've heard the spiel. We have, anywhere between 80 and 90 clubs in any given year, and they range from the purest of social, for which the Happy Belly Club is the best example. These are people who love to try new foods and new restaurants. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have all of our professional clubs. We have a VCPE club, a consulting club, a retail club. In the middle, we have, geographic clubs for all of the different either countries or regions. And we also have our affinity clubs. We have Sloan Women in Management. We have Sloan Pride for our LGBTQ plus community. We have a Vets Club. We have BBSA for our Black Business Student Association. And so they're very individually focused. Um, and what also is great about all of our clubs is the leadership opportunities that they all present. They all have, a leadership team for you as students who are looking to further develop your leadership skills. They're really great ways to get involved. Um, and so, I hope that answered it.
Awesome.
I'm trying to be quick fire here, but I'm not. I'm
You're good.
long-winded.
So the next question I have in terms of like once students arrive to campus, we hear the terms oceans or core teams.
Yeah.
How do we put people together in those
Love
first
it.
cohorts to help that sense of teamwork?
Yeah, this is awesome. So hopefully it comes as no surprise, but someone developed an AI engine to do just this. One of our faculty did. Now it's been, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. And so within admissions, we feed key data to the program team. They run it through this model, and it creates the 6 oceans or cohorts, bodies of water that are hopefully all of them are somewhat balanced and representative of what the total population looks like. And then within that, core teams of 6 or 7 people, also as balanced as they can be, are created as well. And where in the old days, there were massive spreadsheets and it took days to actually create the core teams and the cohorts. Apparently, this model can now be run in 20 minutes.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. A lot of people have that question about how do we develop it. So definitely get some good insight there. The next one is a really interesting question about age and work experience because we have
Yep.
a lot of programs that kind of fit different ranges. So are there any considerations for age and work experience of a candidate in the admissions process? So if they're between, let's say, MBA and a Sloan Fellows program, how to determine which program is a better fit for them?
Yeah. So first of all, and I mean this, we don't really talk about age. Yes, we do talk about years of work experience, and yes, we know we have very smart people interested in Sloan. People can do the math, and so it's more of a technicality. But fundamentally, when we think about it, we think about years of work experience. Um, within our office, we administer the application process for both the 2-year MBA as well as Sloan Fellows. And we are, in fact, taking it upon ourselves to look at a candidate and look at a candidate's experience, and make a recommendation as to whether or not we think it may be a better experience for them in one program versus the other. We will then, if you've applied to one and we think perhaps the other is a better experience for you, we'll reach out to you and offer to have a conversation, explain to you why we think the other might be better for you. Um, and there were people who are sort of at that, we'll say 10-year mark, which could maybe go either way. And they have a strong reason why they may want to pursue the 2-year MBA. They're perhaps looking to completely shift industries, and so they want the summer internship to really help them or whatever. That's just one example. We will respect that. It may not get the outcome that they're looking for, but nonetheless, we will definitely have a conversation with them. And I think that's really one of the benefits of our office managing so many of the degree programs, because we can, in fact, have that overarching purview and trying to help assess what might be best for you.
Awesome. So this is also another question that we pretty much get all the time in terms about financial aid. So could you talk about how Sloan does how does financial aid work at Sloan and
Yeah.
how students potentially qualify for fellowships or additional funding?
Yep. So we offer fellowships. They are merit-based. We do not do need-based fellowships. We also do not, individuals who are sponsored by their employers, also are not eligible for our fellowship. Hopefully, as our mission is to develop principled, innovative leaders, you all understand why, if you have access to a full sponsorship from your employer, which is amazing, you would understand why we might choose to give our limited funds to people who don't have that same opportunity. I talked about the 2 dimensions of demonstrated success and personal attributes. We actually are looking at people who are scoring higher in those areas as a way to prioritize the distribution of fellowship that we have.
Awesome. We touched on this earlier about the visa policies that are happening within this geopolitical landscape. So I have a specific question about, how are visas for internship opportunities liaised between the student, the internship site, and then the MIT Sloan MBA program?
So if, for example, like you're a US citizen, so you don't need a visa, and then you're going to another country for your summer internship, um, or you're from one country and you're going to another country and you need another visa. Um, I have to be honest, my guess would be that our international students office would
Mhm.
work closely with you to determine just what that process needs to be and look like for you to be able to, um, to successfully do your internship, because you may need another visa. We have an amazing international students office and we have a great partnership with them.
Awesome.
So
Yeah. For that particular question, I definitely want you to follow up if you can and reach out to us, and we'll be able to come and get you some additional information about that. I know with the ISO, as we're going through round one applications, we'll have a ISO webinar that talks about the process for international students. So I definitely would love to have you get more information on that particular process. The next question I have for you is a little
So
bit.
just so everybody understands, that was a very polite way of Terrell saying Donna didn't really answer that question very well.
No, it's
No, it's
very
good.
difficult.
I hear you. I, it's a very valid question.
Yep. And I have a question here about the application in terms of the short answer question, in terms of the world that shaped you.
Yes.
Given the limited word count, like how would you recommend someone um, providing more of a personal touch in answering that
Yep.
question?
Yep. And I think, personal touches are certainly, I would say, not required, but encouraged. Um, I think, you have to think about it. I actually think that having, some sort of constraint on the number of words or a page forces people to really think about what's important and to sort of weed out maybe words or ideas that aren't that important. And I can tell you, I've read many, many, many of this particular essay, and it's incredibly insightful. And many people have figured out how to convey, really their lived experiences to us. And is it 250 or 300 words? I don't remember which one it
250.
is, 250. So I trust that each of you will be able to do the same as well. To that point, I know we're not going into the details of the application components, but for me, and this is for people who are looking at the MBA, I would consider your resume, your 60-second video, this short answer question, and your cover letter, those four things together to really tell your story. Your resume is a bit about your work history and your education. Your video is very much about your personal side. Your short answer question is your history of how you got to be the person you are today. And then the cover letter really ties it all together and begins to answer why MIT Sloan.
Awesome. So I'll actually close with this final question, which is kind of encompassing of our conversation. What components of the experience beyond the classroom or the diverse class collaborations prepare students to tackle the messy realities of life?
Oh, I love this question because to me, this is so obvious a skill that our students get, but you're not going to read it in any brochure. And I sort of touched upon it a little bit earlier. I think spending a year or 2 years at MIT Sloan moves everyone down this confidence continuum. And when I say that, it's not the confidence, loudest person in the room beating on the chest, but it's the confidence where you have a real understanding of who you are, what your strengths are, what your contribution is going to be to anything. And therefore, having that comfort level to surround yourselves with other people who complement your skills and your strengths. I see it it's funny because I meet tons and tons and tons of students along the way. And then every year there's a handful who stay connected with me. And to watch their evolution from an info session or an interview until they walk out the door, someone once described it as so and so has become a better version of himself or herself. You don't fundamentally change, but you have a better understanding of who you are, which gives you a certain amount of comfort, which I believe actually makes you a better person, both professionally and personally.